agents for the lender in order to collect money. The technicality lies in the Torah's text, which refers specifically to a lender and his kinsman. Since a Beit Din is a public body, the exclusion of collecting the debt in the Shemitah year didn't apply. The mechanism that the Beit Din used was known as a prosbul, which is a written agreement invoked by the Beit Din, the rabbinic board, on behalf of the lender. Well, now, while this may seem to be a sneaky way to avoid the Shemitah commandment, it's interesting that the word prosbul is really a Hebrew contraction for the words that mean an advantage for the wealthy and the poor. A modern example of this might be someone who owns and operates a bakery. Let's say this person is a gifted and creative baker who works very hard and produces a variety of fantastic items. This baker's business acumen is acceptable, but in today's age of computers and internet commerce, he lacks the knowledge or wherewithal to conduct marketing on anything but a small scale. However, our baker is acquainted with a young man who is smart, knowledgeable of computer technology, but unemployed since he lost his job 10 months ago. The baker could greatly benefit from the man's services, but cannot afford to pay him. So he decides to take a risk and secures a bank loan, using his business as collateral. He then hires the young man, who applies his technical skills to the bakery business. In a short time, the bakery's business grows to a great success. His performance even earns him an increase in salary, because the baker is able to pay off the bank loan ahead of schedule. This is an example of someone performing Shemitah, resulting in a win-win situation. Rabbi Shmuel Yerushalmi in the Torah anthology further elaborates on the phrases, your kinsmen and those among you. He explains that we should not think of the poor and needy as strange or aliens, or as accursed by God to a life of suffering. Perhaps if we think about those in our society today or throughout history who have been punished or outcast for the simple reason that they are different or conspicuous due to various factors beyond their own control, then God's intentions become very clear to us. God understands that when there is extreme disparity between the rich and the poor, especially for prolonged periods of time, it leads to the loss of hope and self-esteem. This further alienates the poor and ultimately becomes a problem for everyone. It becomes a matter of time until social instability emerges as a pressure relief valve. We have all seen this many times throughout history. According to the ancient rabbis, the charity should start at home, within our families, and extend to others within our community. And the charity is not limited to monetary aid. Giving of ourselves, whether it consists of our time, our homes, our food, or sharing our family with a lonely and poor stranger, is the most personal contribution we can make. This is a fundamental characteristic of the community God wishes to create among Bnei Israel. In verse 15:10, the Lord contains the word naton titen, meaning you shall readily give. Give to him readily and have no regrets when you do so, for in return the Lord your God will bless you in all your efforts and undertakings. Ancient rabbis applied a more practical explanation to this passage, citing the sometimes whimsical twists and turns of life. Life's fortunes can sometimes be very transient. Prosperity and privilege can quickly and arbitrarily turn into hardship and distress, and those who act charitably may do so with a faith in the humanity of others who would act similarly. This reminds me of an article that appeared in the newspaper last winter. It was a very heartwarming account of a policeman from New York who encountered a homeless man in his neighborhood. Officer Lawrence DePrimo came upon a homeless man at the crossroads of the world, Times Square. The man was dressed in rags, his beard was unkempt, and his feet were bare. Officer DePrimo told the New York Times, it was freezing out, and you could see blisters on the man's feet. I had on 2 pairs of socks myself, and I was still cold, said the young policeman. So instead of ignoring the man's plight, his desperate plight, Officer DePrimo did something remarkable. He walked next door to a Skechers shoe store and bought him a pair of thermal socks and a pair of boots. And he didn't buy the cheapest ones either. He bought a sturdy pair of all-weather boots for $99. At the time, Officer DePrimo was 25 years old. He demonstrated something about his compassion and character when he said, "I will keep the receipt for the boots with me at all times to remind me that sometimes people have it worse." As we are awed by the remarkable compassion of this young policeman, we can imagine the uplifted feeling that his generous act brought to the homeless man, who very likely gained a renewed faith in the kindness of his fellow man. These days, when you only have to glance at the daily newspaper to get an endless litany of one tragic or heartbreaking story after another, reading about Officer DePrimo was like receiving a gift. I'm guessing that Officer DePrimo is not Jewish, but I do know that he embraced the Torah with his kind act. Specifically, he carried out God's commandment from Deuteronomy, the Parsha of Re'eh, chapter 15, verse 8, which states, "You must open your hand and lend him sufficient for whatever he needs." Thankfully, there are many such kind and caring people in this world, far many more than the media portrays. But it's unfortunate that there are also, albeit a minority, selfish and insensitive people who fail to appreciate all that they've been blessed with. There are some who have a cynical attitude towards charity. They often say that our charitable donations are like throwing money down the drain, that those who receive charity, especially from anonymous sources, rarely appreciate the gesture. They say that we're just enabling someone who should do more for him or herself. Here's another story you may have heard before, but it seems relevant to this topic. A man walking along a beach saw a boy picking up starfish and throwing them into the ocean. He asked the boy why he was throwing starfish into the sea. The boy replied, "The tide is going out, and if I don't throw them into the sea, they'll dry up and die." The man smiled and cynically said, "But there are miles of beach and thousands of starfish on every mile. You can't possibly make a difference." The boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the ocean. "Well," he said, "I made a difference for that one." In his infinite wisdom, and knowing the tendencies of human nature, God issued the commandment of Shemitah to the children of Israel through Moses, his most revered prophet, as a prescription for avoiding the ills that plague society. Through the laws of remission, God has established a built-in mechanism to create a society that will care for the poor, the widow, and the orphan, and avoid placing their fate upon the charitable inclinations of others. God is telling us that by investing in our most precious resource, humankind, we ultimately reward ourselves. It is an investment in our community, as God so wishes for us to build a moral, compassionate, and enduring society. One could argue that an in-depth look of these laws of remission are God's lessons in ethics and economics, not to mention practical wisdom for enhancing the stability and security of his beloved people. Shabbat Shalom.